Welcome back, NPL fans, to the Majors Power Ranking. So we're already in week 4, and we're pretty straight into the season. I think we're about 1/3 now in the season. So the standings are pretty shaping up pretty nicely. The matches are still as hot as at the beginning. So Turbo, let's begin, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange you asked me to begin because you're taking the first game in the weekly recap segment.
Yeah, so we will just be hopping into the first game. The first game this week was the Gotham City Golux versus the previous undefeated Baltimore Braviers, but unfortunately for Moxie, he lost this week in a big 4-0 fashion. And as you can see by the kills, Roserade got a whopping 4 kills, but that is not entirely true, because like 2 Mons were just in front of Roserade and just killed itself. MISDREAVUS went for Memento, ALOMOMOLA went for Healing Wish. That's why Roserade went up with 4 kills, but still that Roserade played a pretty big role, because it was quite invested also into HP, some speed def, and it walled some of the mons on the Bravier side pretty well. And that's one of the main points I think this game. Just Moxie was not able to break Rob's more fatter team this week, and due to that Rob, just with some status, some hazards, he was just able to wear down the Braviers and then clean up with Ace off at the end.
And then we come into the game with a San Francisco Regigiants, or Merc, comes up against Togue in, unfortunately, his last week of the NPL. The NPL. Jesus Christ, NPL. In this game, it was a massive game of 50-50s towards the late game, which Merc came out on top of. There was some early game hacks, which Merc thought he had put him out of the game in Togue's favour, but Merc pulled it back and took the 2-0 victory, getting the 50-50s right on the Mega Morwell. Although Mega Morwell comes out with 4 kills this week, showing perhaps the threat it could have been in the earlier games this season.
Yeah, so if we're moving then over to the Phoenix Sunkern versus the Los Angeles Rams, and while Manny put all his eggs in the basket of Crabominable, he was unfortunately not able to come out on top, mainly because Crabominable had to go for like dynamic punch on the Manaphy to be able to kill it next turn on the trick room with a close combat. It could not went directly for close combat, because then Scald would have just taken him out. And he missed, unfortunately, and that's why Manaphy lived the day, and because it was a really nice set by a pretty common set also by Cheese, which was just the Calm Mind, Rest, Rain Dance, Scald Manaphy, and that really tore Manny's team apart, and that was able to win the game flat out.
Next up, we got the Verd against Rizzy Power. Now, this game was again another really tight game on Rizzy Power and Verd's favour. Riz taking it to the end game. Unfortunately, a slight little mishap when he thought the Cafable could not take a hit from an Analytics Starmie, switching it out, and the Verd sacking in the head echo as the standard play would be, meaning that Riz had to sack his Cafable and lost a vital switching in the end game, which helped Verd clean up in the last game for Mega Pinster on the Frogadiers. So watch out for that transfer next week.
And then moving into another game that went in a pretty big fashion. It was Sydney Shopedes versus the Tampa Bay Lux Race. It ended in a 4-0 for the Shopedes, and basically, as you also see by the kills, Suicune was the star of the show. It got a whopping 5 kills, and just Gypsy brought the correct set, and that was basically able to just flat out win the game. This was Protect, Substitute, Scald, and Calm Mind, and basically with pressure he could basically outstall all the mons that he could normally not deal with, such as the Ferrothorn, and that was a really clever set that just won him the game.
Next up, we got Jolt on Toronto Staraptors and Newcastle Umbreon, with Jolt getting a huge 4-0 victory to round out a really high-scoring week of the NPL. Jolt made a play that was very, very un-Jolt-like this week, going for the huge aggressive play against Abe, a notorious aggressive player, on the Tapu Koko, which could have potentially grass knot against Jolt and lost him the game. And fortunately for Jolt, this play won him the game. It was a win, literally a win-loss turn. Jolt pulled out the offensive play at 50-50 and took the game, and it's a huge 4-0 win for him.
Yeah, and then another 4-0 game this week. It seems to be a bit of a trend, whilst the Chicago BYs versus FC Poplio, so the debut match of David. It was second match, but he made a little bit some change, I think, to the team, but unfortunately he was not able to come out on top, mainly because he went all in with his Tornadoes, with some bulk ups. He was looking to try to win the game, but Mega Latios, it got a massive crit on the Tornadoes, which would have normally just lifted Psychic. It was also a bit of a misplay by Razor itself, because if he went for Thunderbolt it was a bit of a 50-50 to kill. Now unfortunately due to the crit he was able to kill it, and then with the tail with Megalatus could just clean up the game, which was definitely a cool bring, but a little bit unfortunate for David.
And the final game this week, Shadi gets the Volcarona sweep for I think the last game Volcarona has on the Bayern Munich, as it switches over to the Toxapexians, which it just swept. Trev sacking his victory bell early on again, another Mon that was key to his Sun core. Losing that early on means that he couldn't then use it to check the Bayern Munich team later on. It was a great bring with the scarfed Latias on Shadi's part, especially since I think he changed the set last minute as well to make it scarf Latias. So that was a really good bring on his part. Trev tried to manage the game with Torkoal, but unfortunately it got worn down thanks to entry hazards. So unfortunately the Bayern take this 2-0. Not unfortunately, really. Fortunately for Shadi, unfortunately for Trev, the Bayern take it 2-0.
Sure. So now we will just go over to our power rankings. So as you see this week on number 16, I still have the FC Poplio. That's basically because like they could have definitely won this game. Don't get me wrong, and I also mentioned this in the recap, because the Tornadus was looking to sweep, and if Razor made the correct play, it was pretty much a 50-50 if the Thunderbolt would kill or not. But he kind of choked, but then he got a crit, so he got rewarded, and then it steamrolled from there. But I think overall, what's a bit unfortunate, on one end, it was that David had to rely solely on Tornadus to win. There were no other really plays, and also in the early game he was pretty behind. That was really unfortunate for him. But then again, I come back to what I said last week. He is now 0-4. This is not his own team drafted. This will be really hard to just switch this around and go and aim for those playoffs. I think, yeah, it will definitely be hard, and I hope he will definitely start to win some games, but it will be definitely a hard season for him.
Yeah, and on my number 16, I warned you, Togue. I warned you, if you get beat down, you're going down. And I think that Togue, I finally hit Togue with the big drop, because the other players in the league who were winning games just were outplayed, like completely playing better than him, and I thought it was completely viable to drop him. He did play pretty well in the mid game of the game against Merc. The early game, Merc has kind of got a lot of the momentum, but Togue is getting a bit of hacks in his favor, which brings him back into the game, and he plays pretty well, but then he loses all the 50-50s in the end game. Unfortunately, this is Togue's last week, a long-standing NPL coach, and he had to withdraw for personal reasons, so we'll see his replacement next week as on the power rankings, but unfortunately for Togue, he's gone out of the MPL on a pretty low game right there. But at number 15, you and I both have the Los Angeles Fresh Rams, so you start us off.
Yeah, so basically, Maddie this week, he relied on Crabominable, because like every week he struggles quite so much with the matchup, and just like one Mon looks great for him, so he just builds a whole team around it. But then if that Mon does not work in the match, then his whole team does not work. As you saw, the Menifee was able to just sweep right through his team. Yes, of course, he lost like potential 50-50s, because he missed like a dynamic punch which has a 50% accuracy, and if he had hit it, the game would have definitely got a turn for the better for him. So we don't know what would have happened otherwise, but now because he missed, Cheese kind of steamrolled over him in that way, and that is really unfortunate, because Manny is a really great battler, and he says that he still can with this team defeat most of the teams in NPL. So we will just have to see, because he's now 1-3, and if he will be aiming for playoffs with this kind of team, it's looking slim, the chances.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said on Matty there as well. I think that it's just an issue of the weaknesses in his team are kind of getting exposed at this point. I want to flip down a positive though. Matty is using Crabominable like an absolute boss. I think he drafted on a team that, like an actual Matty draft. If you draft it on a draft that he tried and wasn't to have fun with, I think he could do things with it and show that it's actually pretty good in the draft format. So that's a little positive from Matty's performance. Also like to throw in, he's only below Razor on here purely because of record. If he wants to ask me about that, that's the only reason. I'll talk about that a bit when we talk about Razor. Now, I've spoken a bit about Togue. You can end on, you can go to number 14 in Togue.
Yeah, so I think basically what you said was like all three got a bit lucky, but then he started to take advantage of it. He made a nice prediction with Latios, I think in the end game, predicting like Lucario to come in, got a big Psychic off on it, and then at the end game he knew C Momento into Mawel would let him set up an SD and potentially win the game, but unfortunately he lost the 50-50 against Dino, but otherwise he could have just won barring then of course the hacks that went through with this game. But I think he's definitely still a chance, and he definitely showed that his team is capable of putting up a pretty good fight. And I think starting off 1-3, I think his replacement can definitely move up from here and just take the team to a winning record.
And at my number 14, I've got Razor in the Chicago Bears. Now, although he got to win this week, I have kept him below the FC Poplio. I think I'll do this sort of in one, is because the game, if you look at it, sometimes games which end in a defining turn of hacks, you kind of have to theory on to see how the end game will go. This game, I don't feel like that is the case. I feel like David had a very, very clear path to victory if the hacks had not happened. And sort of the pushing point for me to put Razor underneath the FC Poplio is the fact that he clicked the wrong move the first time around. So in my eyes there, that sort of confirmed that I don't understand why he made that play, and then the second time he made the right play. So it's a bit interesting on that part. I think that therefore David played a better game and therefore deserves to stay above him. So that's my sort of reasoning for both the Chicago Bears and FC Poplio. So you quickly talk about the Chicago Bears if you want to round off anything about that.
Yeah, so basically this rounds off our bottom 4, which is exactly the same but in different order. But yeah, for me it's just like Razor is 2-2, which is a better position than the teams behind him. And also like, yes, this week when the hacks helped him in his favor quite so much, but still the tailwind Megalatios to counter the rain was pretty clever, and it helped him pretty much in this whole game, and especially there at the end. He could just clean up basically with it. So I think that was still a cool bring, and that's why he still deserves like number 13.
And at number 12 this week, we both have the Bayern Munich. Now, in my opinion, the Bayern Munich pulled off a good win against a strong team in this season, Trev CL, where he used a little bit of clutch prep at the end game. Sometimes those last-minute prep thoughts usually work, and the Scarflati helped him get rid of a massive threat to his team in the Sun core of Victory Belt and Torkow. The Bayern Munich, what I want to see from them is that Shadi mentioned he wanted to get in that top 10. What I want to see is consistency. If Shadi goes out and loses next week, we're gonna find it quite hard to move him up, because we haven't seen that consistency of just winning a couple of games on the bounce this season. I think that's what he really needs to do to get his season off to something that doesn't end in a relegation battle. And that's my opinion on Shadi at this point in time.
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it all. I think this was a really solid win, and it was really hard because I kind of wanted to move him up, but then all the teams above had also a pretty good track record and were also mainly 2-2 and just overall played a little bit better in certain weeks. And yeah, like this was really solid win, and if Shadi can carry this on, and maybe it will be even better with like his newly formed team because of some trades and transactions he made, who knows, I think he could just steamroll out into that top 8 even, or maybe higher. And yeah, we will definitely have to see what he will show us.
So now on to my number 11, and I've got Merck. Now I want to talk about Merck in a weird sort of term. This game that he played against Togue is the encapsulation of his whole season and what he hasn't been doing. He had a close game, he almost lost it in the end game, and then won the game. The other games that he's lost this season have been close games, he almost loses it in the end game, and then he loses it in the end game. Merck did something different this week. He got the win. He believed in himself. He didn't let the hacks bother him. I like that. That's why I've moved him up a lot. I can see Merck continuing this good form on into next week. I believe he plays Matty next week. Is that right? I want to say he plays Matty next week. I hope he brings that form into the week. He does play Matty next week. I hope he brings that form into the next week's game. Stays consistent, ignores any hacks that happens, because Merck has a tendency to get triggered by hacks. But he showed he can do it this week. I moved him up because of that, and I'm impressed with the fact that he stuck with it, won the 50-50s, and showed what he could do, and that's why he's at number 11 this week.
Yeah, that's definitely some fair points. I have him a little bit higher up. We'll talk about him momentarily. But first, Moxie. So Moxie this week finally lost his first game, which is really unfortunate for him because he was on a really cool winning streak. He was currently 3-0. So definitely... when I look at it, he had some cool text in his prep, like again the ALOMOMOLA set with wake up slap for the Mega Torpedo, eject bottom, magic code. I think those definitely were cool tags. And then substitute Mega Venusaur, fake out infinite. I don't know. sometimes it was cool text, but sometimes it was maybe a bit too much. And then maybe it's just some more standardized sets were maybe better, I don't know. But I think mainly the breaking point this week was that he just could not find the right moment to set up with some of his mons, or just break his opponent's team in general. And then he also did not bring any hazards himself or removal. So when hazards got up on his side, he really struggled the remainder of the match, and I think that really steamrolled. So if he just brought hazards or just removal, I think the game would have balanced out a little bit better.
That is completely fair enough, and I'll just close off on that because I've got Moxie just a spot above. I do agree with a lot of what you said. Moxie taking his first defeat of this season, but I think it was more on the fact that Moxie did play okay in the game, but the Gotham City Golux sort of showed perhaps why they got promoted in what they did. But I'll talk a little bit more about them this week. I think just Baltimore did what they could, but were just simply out-prepped and outplayed by the Gotham City Golux this week. But you have Mr. Trevcl at number 10. So you talk about him.
Yeah, so Trev this week, like past few weeks he had some strong showings, but this week like it was really hard for me, as I mentioned already with Charlie. Like for me, all those teams are really close to each other, and then I just have to look on a weekly basis and just look how is their streak going or how is their momentum going. And for Trev, the momentum at the moment is really low because he just took a L, and against Charlie, who is not rated that high, and like I don't think there was. I think there were actually a few things Trev could have done, and he also mentioned it quite clearly in his own video, so definitely watch that. But like sacking Victory Bell early was not great, letting Skarmory roost up so it could later come in again, and was also able to get the defog off because it could come in on Torkoal if the rocks were still up. For Corona had definitely a harder time, also not damaging Seismitoad and having to sack Finny on it next turn. Like all those little things just add up to that loss he took, and I think if he just made some better decisions in the game, I definitely think he could have won that game. So that's why he's now with a low momentum going at number 10.
Okay, and now we're bordering into our top 10. So now I have the Gotham City Golux taking the win from the Baltimore Braveries. I mentioned before the Gotham City Golux prepped and played well. They're showing slightly what they showed last season in the minors, where, okay, their team has been a bit 50-50 this season. Their season's been a bit 50-50 this season, but they got a good win this week, and hopefully, again, it's an issue of consistency. The same as Shardy. Hopefully, Rob can go on to next week and just get another good win and, like, iron in some consistency into his season, because so far he's had a few ups and a few downs. I think that's what he needs to do to break into that top 8, because that's what's separating him from them at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And I have at number 9 Merc. So what you mentioned also, Merc had definitely some hex involved games, and this week he still got hexed pretty much, and like to the point that it was really annoying for him, missing that tail wave, missing that heat wave. That was crucial damage, crucial speed control. But instead of just thinking, okay, I just hit X and I forfeit and I quit with Mons, which he mentioned in the video. No, he saw that small window of opportunity, and he went for it, he went all in, he won the 50-50 at the end, and he just got rewarded with the win. And I think that was really, really solid. And I think if Merc can have that mindset every game, even if he gets hexed, I think he will just go easily, go high.
Yeah, it's completely fair. Now, number 8, we both have the Phoenix Sunflowers. Had a little sticky patch this the past couple of weeks, although admittedly both games have been incredibly close that Riz has lost. He's been bringing games down to the wire, and I think that's due to the nature of his team, which is fair enough. He's playing it excellently, and I mean, I don't really have much critique of Riz. Just a small blip in the game causes a loss. I mean, that happens sometimes, but I mean, it's just ironing out those mistakes. I think Riz is like a slight dark horse for playoffs. Maybe a little bit of a stretch for him, but if he irons out those little mistakes and keeps getting those close wins, you never know.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right on that one. I think Riz this season is that wild card, because as he showed also this week, he played pretty aggressively some turns against Vert, when like with Breloom predicting that Mega Pinstal game to come in, go for the Rock Tomb on a Katana, getting the Mega Pinstal right and just kill it flat off. That does some really ballsy plays. But then, as you mentioned, really unfortunate he missed like the mishap with the Starmie, forgetting that how analytic worked. And yeah, unfortunate for him that really costed him a mon. And also I think he mentioned in his video he might have made a slight misclick. He actually wanted to click Dark Pulse the turn with Greninja, and that was actually the turn that Starmie came in. And if he would have just flat out killed the Starmie from there, I think it was definitely a different game, because Scarf Starmie in the end really hurt his team. So yeah, I think Riz is the wildcard for playoffs, but I don't know, his team is really hit and miss, so it can definitely go either way.
Fair enough. Now we're coming on to my number 7. Now this top 8, top 7 again, once again this week was just a mess. You could add anyone anywhere apart from probably the top 2. The top sort of 7 to 3, you could add anyone and anywhere. I think you see that within our rankings. I went with Trev at the bottom this week because he got swept simply because of a misplay that he made. I think the other coaches above him played better games, and that's why I've got Trev that low in terms of the top 7. I think that he just needs to be more careful with his Suncor. Victory Belt and Torkoal on mons that require good management. Victory Belt's not taking a hit, and you can't be like switching in on potential hits or risking it against mons that could be scarfed to counter that Sun speed that Victory Belt gets, especially considering Victory Belt with knockoff is as Scarf Lati is a great law on a Victory Belt with knockoff. So I think Trev was just a little bit careless there, although his team's got much better after the trades this week, so we could see how that affects his team in the next games. Again, Mega Gallade potentially could have brought the game back, but it was futile at that point because of the mons that he'd lost.
Yeah, so at number 7 I have the Gotham City Golux, and that's because Rob again won a pretty strong game. So also Rob is 2-2 this season, and I think the wins he showed us were really convincing, and he really carried out a certain strategy, and yeah, he had really a solid game plan, and he really performed to it, like a bulkish team with the hazards and then some cleaners at the end, like the Ace Elf, that just really solid game plan, really solid execution, some really cool prep with like Taunt, Dual Status, Victini, Taunt, Bulk Up, Superpower, Z-Fly, Tandy. Yeah, some really cool sets, and it's definitely good to see, because he has that smoke on background, but he still goes and makes some great sets in his prep.
Fair enough. I do think that the Gotham Golux smoke on background does help them out. Now, to a man who I don't think has a smoke on background, we have Verd, the Tampa Bay Frogadiers, who I've jumped up a lot because I was really impressed with the way he's been playing the past couple of weeks. Verd is very calculated in the way that he plays, and from recently starting to help him prep as well, and seeing him, hearing his thought process behind sets, he considers every possibility, and he's one of those players that has a game plan when going into the game. I believe he had that with Riz this week. He knew he had an offensive team to come up against, and all he had to do was go blow for blow with it. And I think that he came out on top of that. He made the correct plays throughout the game and capitalized on a mistake that Riz made unknowingly. I think that he didn't know that Riz made that mistake, but Verd made the plays that he needed to win the game, and he's just been a very efficient and a very strong player this season. And now picking up Mega Beedrill into next week could be even more of a huge threat, considering the way I've been hearing he's good at prepping with it. So we'll see about that. But now you've dropped Abe quite a few spots this week. Why is that?
So I dropped Abe a few spots because at the beginning we were really convinced with Abe, and also his team. We really thought, okay, this is like an Abe-like team, and yeah, he's just doing really well with it. But I think this time Jolt showed how to play and how to maybe even counter Abe a little bit, because Abe got a bit manhandled this week because he couldn't just not do much this week against Jolt, because Jolt just out-prepped Abe flat out, and just even he could just not make the plays he normally wants to make to try to win the game. But no, just that Scarf Crobat and just all those taunt uses, Abe got really shut down. And I think because it was such a convincing loss, and also like last few weeks he had some cool tech like the Ayapa Berry, Coco, that really saved him. But now there was no such thing, because Jolt's prep was just that much better, and sometimes you have those weeks. But this might be going a bit back to Abe's habit of playing fast, building fast. So I hope he doesn't fall back in those old habits, but just go strongly as he showed the first few weeks. But I'm a bit iffy about it, and I don't hope he falls too much, but I'm afraid.
And I'll talk about Abe a little bit later, but next up I've got the Tampa Bay Luxrays, who did again this week have a slightly questionable result against Gypsy, rather getting beat down by an amazing Suicune set. I believe it's coined as Vic Coon. I want to say it's called Vic Coon. I think that's how Gypsy. But either way, forgetting the name, it was a brilliant set from Gypsy, which we'll talk about later. And I think it was just designed to beat down a REUNICLUS. There was no way Mono was winning a Carmine War, even with the REUNICLUS set that he had. The crit was never coming on his part, and even if he did get the crit, the Suicune was most likely going to be behind a sub. So I'm really glad the Suicune got the crit first time of asking, because that could have been a long and drawn out end to a game that didn't need to happen. But unfortunately, I think he just got beat down by matchup at this point. Gypsy just completely outclassed him with his prep, and the Luxrays are now looking a bit in trouble. They might be dropping here because they've had a few tough weeks against some tough opponents, so maybe they struggle against a higher caliber of player in this league. You never know. But you've got Jolt at number 4, a player who's been floating around that sort of spot for you over the last couple of weeks.
At number 5, but yeah.
5.
Yeah, so we basically switched the Luxrays and the Staraptors around. So from last week, like a few weeks back, Jolt was already in this top 5, but last week he dropped down a little bit because he had a bit of a devastating loss against against Toku, who was not doing that great. But this week he had a really convincing win against Abe, who is a really high caliber player. And I think he just had really solid prep, and that Scarf Crobat was really great, and just all those monsters that you stunned. I think Greg got an instant boner from it because of that prep. But yeah, I think the prep just carried him the whole game, and he just did not have to make many plays. But then he makes a play with like his Swampert is in on top of Coco. He just expects that Grass Knot and goes hard to his Crobat, and yes, there was a Grass Knot and he got it right. But like Crobat was his win con, and he did not have to risk that win con at that moment. He could just have like sacked Swampert off, went into Crobat, and Crobat still won the game. But yeah, he mentioned it himself. It was a little bit of a mishap, but yeah, what you gotta do for the differential, you gotta do apparently. But yeah, that's that slight mishap. That's just edging him out a little bit for now.
Now, when I see Jolt versus Abe, I know it's going to be a blow-for-blow game. Jolt either plays hyper mega offensive out of nowhere, or he's very, very calculated with his plays. Whenever he plays Abe, he's got to play hyper offensive because Abe's playstyle is like that. So when you match up Jolt versus Abe, it comes on prep, and in that sort of game, that's what's going to happen. Jolt out-prepped Abe this game, as simple as it is. The reason I haven't got him above is purely because of record and consistency, but I'll talk about that when I talk about Abe. Jolt, again, made the man's play this week. I think that's a common theme this season in the NPL. If you look at games like Cheese versus Gypsy, again, Jolt versus Abe, the man's play has come up on top. The play that could you lose you the game, but could also confirm you that victory. Those plays are winning the games of this season in the NPL, and I think that might change the format slightly, and you might see a bit more of an aggressive play style from the league coming into the later weeks, because these plays are working out against the big boys. So if the other sort of players gain initiative from that, maybe that could happen. So Jolt and Cheese are great examples of that. Jolt is at my number 4 this week.
Yeah, so for me it's still the Luxrays. Yeah, they got a devastating loss against Gypsy, but I think also, especially when you watch Mono, he explains everything really great and in very good detail. And I think he definitely, even when he saw that Suicune set, which was just really great against his team, he just knew some ways around it with like a Ferroton, and even maybe REUNICLUS could beat it. It was really hard, but he just saw that small opportunity. Unfortunately, there was the crit, and the Ferroton got burned, but at the end it just was a total win for Gypsy because of that Suicune. But I think Mono was not really that out of it, because the prep itself was pretty solid, and I think also the GLISCOR set, which was Mono Ice Fang, was kind of walled by some mons, but still it had then Taunt for the more bulky mons that could otherwise abuse it. But it still it was really great because Gypsy was looking to just set up a dual dance with Lando T, just flat out win the game, but then GLISCOR just went for Ice Fang the first time around on that Rock Polish, and then Gypsy did not expect the Protect anymore. Then he went for the Protect, cancelling out the Z move, at least a lot of the damage, and then he basically shut down the Landorus because he would now be able to just protect on all the flies. I think that was a really cool set by him, and I think definitely that the game might have turned out differently if there was no Suicune, but of course Gypsy brought the correct set.
Now, number 3, I've maintained at my Newcastle Ambient. Well, they dropped one place purely because of an amazing revelation season, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Abe this week, going down to Jolt. The reason I've kept him above Jolt is because Abe's record is on par with Jolt's, but I think Abe's played higher standard of player than Jolt has. across the season. I also think that Abe, this game against Jolt, technically did nothing wrong again in one of his losses, and he made the sort of safe, acceptable play. Jolt made the aggro 20% win rate play that won in the game because it was a confirmed win, and you can't take away from the opponent in that sense, because Abe had no reason to predict that in some senses, because it's not a Jolt play to make. I think that the 4-0 loss this week was purely a great play by his opponent. It was nothing to do with Abe's prep. It was nothing to do with the way he played. It was a great play on the other part, and therefore I don't believe he deserves to drop that far. Your number 3 is Verd, and he has gained a lot of spaces for you.
Yeah, he gained a lot of space, and I think it's basically due to like the last few weeks I was a bit holding off on Verd. Like he was already like 2-1. He was in a pretty solid position, but I don't know. I didn't know if this was like the beginning of a streak or that. What it was like he had some really solid games, but also some really close games. But then this week, and he just had really again some solid prep, and I think that's also like him and Moxie are like the guys that have some still, when we are into like mid Gen 7, still have incredibly innovative prep. And just to say, like Sleep Dog Mega Pincer, I think it was for the Among Us if it would come. For Breloom I meant, for Sport Breloom, then DD ZYGARDE with like 1000 waves and Z Iron Tail, especially for the clef, because he like expected like something of an unaware clef, some dual scarfers. Like again, he had some really solid prep with some like some real heat or just innovative sets that I really liked, and he just knew how to execute his game plan. He also, if you don't have watched his video, definitely watch it, because in the end game he really explains well what would have happened if Riz made certain switch that he still had like ZYGARDE in the back that could just basically clean up. So he really knew how he would execute that end game, and he definitely did that, and he got a nice victory over it.
Next up, we have number 2. Both of us are now 2-1 consistent, but the revelation of this season, the Cheese Boy, is certainly back with two huge victories against 2 of the league's champions. Well, not champions, as in like one league champion and Matty, who is a consistent threat throughout the NPL seasons. 2 notorious players in league format. Cheese has just killed in 2 weeks. Cheese is a revelation this season, but people say that he's just continuing the godly form that he left the NPL in. People should have expected Cheese to come in and win some games, because he is a good player like that, and he's adapting to this Gen 7 format like it is no business at all. I want to see. I feel like Cheese is going to be in the semi-finals at least this season. That's a prediction to put out there as well. He is killing it, and I hope his form continues. Not much to say on his performance other than the fact that Manaphy set was the perfect set to bring this game. That shows how developed his prep is. It shows how comfortable he is with the Mon, and he deservedly got the victory.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all there is to it. I definitely hope Cheese will do right, because I don't think many people were expecting Cheese to do so well, because it's his first Gen 7 league. But yeah, he's really the dark horse this season. So then we will move to our number 1, which is still Gypsy. And again, this week he had a really convincing win. Like last week, he had a bit of a rough loss against Cheese. I think everyone saw it, and himself also took it a bit hard. But this week he came out really hard, and he came out on top pretty convincing with like that great Suicune set that basically just won him the game. And also what I really liked about Gypsy, like there was a certain point that he could have tried to go for the win with Suicune against Ferrothorn, but still it would have resulted in a bit of a PP war stall fest at that point. But he was like, okay, I don't get careless, I don't have to go for the Suicune win right now, I can just preserve it, just weaken his team a little bit more, and then get in Suicune again. And that's exactly what he did, and he was able to come out on top, and I think that's really great, and that's what makes a champion.
Yeah, we were right not to drop the Sydney Sharpie days last week, because he's come out on top again, beating one of the top players in the league as of this point according to our power rankings, with an amazing Suicune set that he was just in complete control of the whole game. The plays were calculated. I bet he was just sitting back chilling to music, clicking those buttons. He knew exactly what he needed to do, get that Suicune in, get it set up, and that's the game there and won. Mono did play into his hands a little bit, but you can't give the king any opportunities, because he will do that to you. So that rounds off our power rankings for week 4 of the NPL. We will have some coach changes and some transfers coming into next week, so I wonder how that will affect both mine and Phalop's rankings. But if you want to say anything else.
No, I think definitely we're getting now about midway through the season. Definitely check out all the matches every week, because the best insight you get from those coaches, and I think that's it.
So make sure you check the match out, as Phalop said. Leave a like on this video and subscribe again. We always appreciate your comments. And if you're liking the fact that we've shortened down the episodes, give us some credit. No, I'm joking. But that's going to be us.
Bye.